Good morning. Let me say the case that we have been dealing with now for the last several weeks around Nolan Wells is indicative of many cases around the country that have raised serious questions with racial overtones. Attorney Crump and I are going tomorrow, where I'm doing the eulogy for a young black man in Madison, Wisconsin, homeless, and they say had a knife, and there's the tape of him being shot, 3 cops surrounding him, shot and killed, 4 shots. And these cases building up in a climate of an administration in Washington that we cannot feel will objectively investigate. There was a time that we could say if state authorities fail us, we can go to the Justice Department. Even under George Bush, we went to the Justice Department. We, at this point, have to hope that one, we could deal with civil courts, or secondly, that there's a balance of power with the Democrats taking the House in November, and maybe the Judiciary Committee under that can at least put a check and balance on cases that need to be investigated. But we are right now where we have 2 parents, lovely parents, I've gotten to know them, that really don't have an answer to a question. Is it a civil rights violation or not? And we do not know. How do you trust the words of people that say immediately there was no foul play when you haven't even investigated whether there was foul play? How do you trust people that come back from something that happened and never really give you a straight story of what happened, including you have the keys to the car? So when you have more questions than answers, you have to have people that will drive the answers out, and that's what we do. And that's why I've been involved, and that's why we stay involved. And it gets worse and worse and worse. The parent of one of the boys threatening to sue us for asking a question. Imagine that now. Some of y'all call it, what do you feel about the parents? One of the boys says he's going to sue you and Ben Crump. Sue us for what? For saying what happened? So we've gone back that far. And that is why we're going to stand with these parents, because usually, you know, I come from Brooklyn, New York. I was born and raised there. I don't come from the South. But my mother used to bring me down south to my grandmother in Dothan, Alabama. And Congresswoman, my grandmother told me, you see that pen over there? I said, yes. She said, that's a pen of hogs and pigs. I said, yes, ma'am. She said, always know something. If you take a brick and you throw it in that pile, the hog that hollers is the hog you hit. There's too much hollering going on in Mississippi that we haven't hit something. I can't figure out which one we hit, but we hit something. Because now they talking about lawsuits, they threatening threatening a mother of a child, trying to get her job taken. You wouldn't be hollering if we wasn't hitting something. And we're going to stay on that, and we're going to stay on it all the way. In light of that, before attorney, and I call him the Attorney General of Black America, gives us the legal basis, and then we hear from the parents. Congresswoman who lived herself through dealing with the whole tragedy of her own son. That's how we met, on a plane. She was a flight attendant at the time. And she stopped me on the plane and said, Grandma, why ain't you dealing with my son's case? And we started a relationship. She ended up being elected right here in Georgia and reelected. They redrew her lines, and she was reelected anyhow. The lines couldn't reduce the favor of the people. Congresswoman Lucy McBath.
No introduction, no names yet, just the words of a man who has stood at this podium before for other families in other cities. That was Reverend Al Sharpton, connecting a case out of Mississippi to a pattern he says he's seen too many times, and drawing a hard line between what officials have said and what has actually been proven. A young man is dead. His name is Nolan Wells. He was 18 years old, a football player from Mississippi, homeless. No, that detail belonged to another case Sharpton mentioned in the same breath. A reminder of just how many of these stories are competing for the same 15 seconds of national attention. What is established is this. Nolan Wells's body was recovered from Horn Island, federal land off the Mississippi coast managed by the National Park Service. His parents, Christine and Elmore Wells, say they still do not have an answer to a single question: what happened to their son? What remains disputed is almost everything else. Was this an accident? Was it something else? Local authorities have not, according to the family's legal team, offered a full accounting, and in the vacuum, a coalition of civil rights figures, a sitting member of Congress, and a team of attorneys have stepped forward, not to accuse anyone by name, but to demand an investigation they say has not yet happened in full. This is the story of what was said in that room, what it means, and what it doesn't yet tell us.
As a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, I'm the second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. We are demanding a full federal investigation. Kash Patel, we're demanding a full federal investigation as to what has actually happened to Nolan Wells. We want to make sure that every stone is unturned because his life matters. All of our children's and our families' lives matter. And we must fight back. We must stand up and we must demand accountability for this family's loss. We cannot turn a blind eye to what continues to happen again and again and again. That's the reason why I ran for Congress, to make sure that we continue to put a face on what's happening to our families and our communities every single day. We must say Nolan's name. Amen. Say his name. Lift his name. And as the national black journalist of this country, you have the ability to be able to lift this story and not let it die. We see over and over again these kinds of tragedies in our communities that continue to happen. And they make it to CNN. They make it to MSN Now. They make it to our local news for maybe 30 days, if that. Mm-hmm. And then the stories are gone. And the carnage is left with the families and the communities that have lost someone that they love. So I thank the National Black Journalists. Thank you for lifting this family story. Do not let it die. Continue to say his name. Continue to tell his story, because they deserve justice, and it matters. It mattered for me. It mattered for Trayvon. It mattered for Eric Brown. It matters for all of our loved ones that we have lost.
As Attorney Crump comes, let me say, as Congressman McBath has said, the caucus has asked the federal government to look into it. For those of us that are worried about the politicalization of the present administration, that is why January becomes important, that we have a judiciary committee that can also monitor when investigation happens now or does not happen. So it won't end there. They may come out with any announcement they want in the next month or so. We're having a big march August 28th in Washington we must deal with voting rights, so we have the right people in so we can check and balance. I want to say to people in Mississippi, whatever investigation you come with, once we have a fair and balanced government, your investigation will be investigated. It will not end with what they say in Mississippi. Attorney General of Black America, Benjamin Crump.
Thank you so much, Mentor. Reverend Al, thank you for helping not only lead the effort to get to the truth, but keeping this family in your prayers as you have done so many more families, giving them support. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Eric Hertz, Attorney Lisa Park, Attorney Ahmad Smith. We have the honor of representing the family of Nolan Wells. Obviously, you all have come to know his parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley. And this is hard. I heard Congresswoman McBath, who lost her son Jordan almost 12 years ago, and it's still raw and emotional when you hear her talk about the loss of a child. I mean, he's not coming back, and that is the story. Everything else is just, hyperbole, is distractions. The story is what happened to Nolan Wells. Somebody knows something. Somebody saw something. I'm thankful to Reverend Al Sharpton.
The next voice belongs to someone whose connection to this podium goes back over a decade, to a loss of her own. Congresswoman Lucy McBath lost her son, Jordan Davis, in 2012. She says that history is why she is now the second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and why she is one of the people pushing for a federal review of what happened to Nolan Wells. According to statements at the press conference, the outline of the timeline is this. Nolan Wells disappeared around the 4th of July. His father, Elmore Wells, says he went to the home of another young man, identified in the room only by the first name Jack, searching for information. His body was recovered from Horn Island roughly a day after that visit. That is the skeleton of the case, as the family's attorneys have laid it out publicly. The flesh, the forensic detail, the cause of death, the sequence of who saw what and when has not been made public, and that gap, more than any single piece of evidence, is what's driving this story. The Congressional Black Caucus has formally requested a federal investigation. As of the press conference, that request had been pending for 7 days, with no confirmed response from federal authorities.
Mr. Tyler Perry and Terrell Owens and Byron Allen putting up these rewards. I understand others have now put up rewards, and that's good because that means we all have the same objective. We want the truth about what happened to Nolan Wells, and it is urgent. It is urgent because each day that goes by, you worry, will we ever get to the truth? And so that's why we want to thank CBC for calling on the federal authorities and anybody else who has resources to help this family get to the truth of what happened to their son. I know I was talking to Kristen Clark, and she said, no, let's make sure that all taxpayers' money that goes to support federal resources apply to our children too. I mean, let's say that nobody should say, oh, it doesn't matter that much because it's a black child. No, it matters. All of our children matter. And so we are going to continue every day to say his name, Attorney Hertz, Attorney Park, Attorney Smith, trying to work with the local district attorney to give them what they need to do a thorough, fair, full, impartial investigation. That's what we're asking for. Everything else is just a distraction because Nolan's birthday is next Wednesday, August 19th. It is going to be extremely difficult for his mother, his father, and his family, because this August 19th will be like no other that they've ever had for the last 19 years. I mean, it's a milestone when your child gets to be 18 years old. You try to breathe a little easier, Reverend. Now you say, man, we almost got them there. They at the cusp of being an adult, cusp of manhood. And you heard how Elmore was working so hard, him and Nolan, his football career. I mean, he had a good start, but this was really going to be his year. I mean, so much hope, so much promise. And then July 4th came, and 4th of July will never be the same to Christine and Elmore. And on the 19th, next Wednesday, his family, we're all asking for prayer for Nolan. I know there's going to be a prayer visual in Ocean Springs. I know Reverend Al is going to work to make sure we're all praying all across the nation. But y'all, let's pray. Can we pray together in unity to say, let's get to the truth of what happened to Nolan Wells? Can we do that, America? Can we at least come together in unity on his birthday? Everybody who claimed to ever be a friend of his, can we come together in unity and pray for the truth and try to have love in our hearts for this family, for this broken-hearted mother and father, his sisters and brothers? Can we try to give them grace and give them love and pray for their humanity, for their son who was lost on 4th of July and is never coming back? Is that so much to ask? Let's have a National Day of Prayer on August 19th, next Wednesday, for Nolan Wells. And at this time, we'll hear from his mother and father, then Erica, and us will try to answer your questions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for having us, for platforming our son's story. As many of you know, his 19th birthday is next Wednesday. And it's, as the days gets closer, and it's definitely getting harder, that realization is really sinking in. That we don't have our son physically here anymore. And I think a lot of people have forgotten. Only thing we want to know is what happened. That's all we want to know, is what happened to our son. Because many parents out there, you still have your children. You still can hug them. You still can call them. You still can celebrate their life with them. And we do not have that anymore. Our lives have forever changed. This new normal is something I would never wish on anyone, not even my worst enemy.
The family's lead attorney has represented families in some of the most closely watched cases in the country. Here, he lays out what the family says they actually want. Crump was careful, repeatedly, to say the family is not accusing anyone of a specific crime. What they are asking for, in his words, is the same kind of investigation any family would receive. Nothing more and nothing less. Here is what has actually been confirmed publicly. Multiple public figures, among them Tyler Perry, Terrell Owens, and Byron Allen, have contributed to a reward fund tied to information about Nolan Wells' death. That detail matters, because a reward implies investigators believe there is information still out there, held by someone who hasn't come forward. Crump also referenced a cell phone belonging to Nolan Wells, one that is central to a planned joint forensic examination involving the family's independent experts, the district attorney's office, and potentially the FBI. As of the press conference, no date had been set for that examination. What has not been confirmed? Any specific cause of death, any named suspect, or any finding of foul play. The family's attorneys were explicit that they are not asserting foul play occurred, only that it has not yet been ruled out, and that the family wants a transparent process to make that determination.
A very big piece will no longer be there. We just want the truth. We just want to know what any other parent would want to know. We're asking the questions any parent would ask. And if you feel that something's wrong with that, then that's a problem that you have to deal with. But as far as us and our family, we're just asking for truth, transparency, and to please keep us in your prayers. Next week is going to be a hard week, and the years follow are going to be hard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian and Elmore. It never gets easy, Reverend Al. And they're asking, I know Reverend Jamal Bryant is coming to Ocean Springs. Anybody who can come to Ocean Springs to be at the prayer vigil with them on a Wednesday evening at 7 p.m., please come. And if you can't come, please have prayer vigils in your city and your communities. We need to find out what happened. Attorney Hurts, Attorney Parks, and Reverend Allen, as we're trying to answer your questions. The family, obviously, motion that they'll try to answer questions if they can. Any questions?
Yeah, what's up?
Hello, my name is Logan Johns, NABJ.
Yeah, give us where you're calling, where you.
NABJ News.
Okay.
What do you believe accountability and justice for Nolan Wells should look like?
It's very simple. As we always say, if it was your child.
Before the legal arguments, before the politics, this is a mother, 5 days before what would have been her son's 19th birthday. Christine Wells said plainly that she and her husband are not asking for anything unusual. They are asking the same question any parent would ask. Here is where the story gets more complicated. According to Crump, the family and the attorneys representing them have faced threats of lawsuits and what he described as harassment, including pressure directed at Christine Wells's employment. He did not name who was making those threats, and that omission is worth noting. The specifics of who and why remain undisclosed. This is also where a broader tension in the case becomes visible. The family's team says they are being met with hostility simply for asking questions, while, separately, unnamed parties have told at least one of the young men involved, and possibly others, that there was no foul play before any investigation was reportedly completed. If accurate, that would mean a conclusion was publicly stated before the process that should produce it had run its course. That is an allegation from the family's side, not an independently verified fact. And it's exactly the kind of claim a real investigation, not a press conference, would need to settle. If you're finding this case as confusing to untangle as we are, that's exactly why we do this, pulling apart what's confirmed from what's alleged, one case at a time. If that's useful to you, subscribing helps this channel keep doing it.
And I'll simply say this because that question has come up, and I released a statement, and I want to be clear about it. We defend the First Amendment rights of content creators reporting on Nolan Wells' case. We stand with content creators, independent journalists, and citizens who are responsibly reporting on the Nolan Wells case and asking legitimate questions in pursuit of truth and accountability. The First Amendment protects robust public discussion on matters of public concern, and those protections are not reserved just for traditional media. We are deeply concerned when cease and desist letters, threatened lawsuits, or other legal pressure become tools to intimidate or silence lawful scrutiny. There is an important difference between knowingly spreading false information and asking questions, examining. I want to make sure I get it exactly as we said. Okay. There's an important difference between knowingly spreading false information and asking questions, examining evidence, identifying inconsistencies, expressing opinions, and demanding transparency. Reporting should not be silent. Reporting should not be silenced, and legitimate questions should not be met with intimidation. Those seeking truth and accountability in the Nolan Wells case have every right to
Elmore Wells followed his wife at the podium, describing his son as the one who brought the family its sense of fun, and describing what the coming years now look like without him. Both parents used almost identical language: truth, transparency, and the same standard of investigation any other family would receive. That repetition, across two separate statements, is itself notable. It suggests a family that has been coached toward restraint, or one that genuinely has nothing more specific to allege, possibly both. One exchange at the press conference touched directly on witness credibility. A reporter asked Elmore Wells whether it raised alarm bells when a young man named Jack, described as one of Nolan's friends, reportedly referred to Nolan in the past tense a day before his body was recovered, before anyone had confirmed he was deceased. Elmore Wells's answer was measured. He said that in the moment, his focus was entirely on finding his son, not on parsing the tense of someone else's sentence. That's a fair human answer. It's also not a resolution. Whether that verbal slip means anything at all is something only a formal investigation, one that interviews Jack under those specific terms, could actually determine. As of the press conference, it was unclear whether that had happened. A separate reporter asked whether investigators had made contact with a young woman reportedly seen leaving with Nolan Wells before his disappearance. The family's attorneys declined to answer in detail, saying they didn't want to compromise the ongoing investigation by speaking publicly about it.
And it's Greg Dunmore from Post-Beat Media out of Detroit, the ABC sister station TV20. Evil prevails when good men and women remain silent when the facts come out, and they will come out. If it indicates that something sinister did not happen and it was a freak accident, will you believe that the truth is still not being revealed? Because if the truth is not going to indicate on some level that something sinister was done, will you not believe it to be something else if the truth is that it was not?
If the truth comes out,
yes,
and it's clear, then we will accept the truth. That's all we're asking for. And we only have said that the people that are attacking them for raising the question of the truth say the same thing. I think that we've leaned over backwards in every press event, at the funeral, me doing the eulogy, saying we weren't going to prejudge. Yet they keep getting lambasted. Imagine this. You're losing your child and you're being attacked for asking what happened. I mean, they're not political figures. Why are they under attack for asking for the truth? So it's not about us accepting, it's about whether or not those involved can accept. Yeah.
Yes, do you mind with Black Wall Street Times?
Well, they always try to shut us up. I will not be silenced. Yeah, it's on.
Yes, Nehemiah Franklin.
Don't move the mic. Okay.
Try this again. Okay. Yes, Nehemiah Frank with the Black Wall Street Times out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Condolences to you both. My question is for Mr. Wansley. When you went to Jack's house and he used the past tense and literally said to you, from what you...
Away from the core facts of the case, a second conflict has been unfolding. over who gets to ask questions about it publicly and what happens to them when they do. Crump read a prepared statement defending independent journalists and content creators covering the case, specifically citing concerns about cease and desist letters and threatened lawsuits being used, in his words, to intimidate people asking legitimate questions. It's worth pausing on why that statement exists at all. A civil rights attorney doesn't typically issue a formal First Amendment defense of online reporting unless something has already happened to provoke it. That suggests legal pressure, real or threatened, has already been applied to at least one person covering this story, though the press conference did not name who. This is also where the case becomes a case study in how modern true crime stories spread. A reporter asked directly what misinformation the team wanted to correct, and got a somewhat indirect answer, acknowledgement that social media has distorted details, paired with a defense of the family's right to keep asking questions regardless. That's not a debunking, it's a statement about process, not facts. And it's a useful reminder that not every claim made at a podium is a claim about evidence. This is the part of the story most channels skip, the fight over who's allowed to cover it. We're not skipping it. If you want the full picture instead of the clipped version, subscribing means you won't miss where this goes next.
That can offer resources to help investigate the matter thoroughly. And so Nolan was not only Christine and Elmo's child, but when you think about it in a philosophical way, he was all of our children. But by the grace of God, it could be our child next. And as American citizens, we have the absolute right to say our federal government should extend resources for our children like they will extend to everybody else. I would never forget when President Obama, with Reverend Al and I, when Trayvon Martin was unalive, and he said that it's important that we extend all of the resources of the federal government to help this family get to answers of the truth. And that's all you would want if it was your child. That's all they want if their child. Every resource available, help us get to the truth.
And let me say that and answer that. It's important that you understand that when we raise these issues, that's all what we wanted. We raised the issue, I was out front, Ben was the attorney with Trayvon Martin, and we finally got George Zimmerman in court. When the jury said not guilty, we said we disagreed, but we didn't go and attack his parents. We didn't go and chase him down. We accepted that. When we had the killing in Missouri with Michael Brown, and President Obama was president.
One of the most direct questions of the day was also one of the simplest. Is the family's team actually talking to the district attorney or not? Herds confirmed there has been communication with the DA's office, including a meeting on July 15th in Mississippi, but declined to characterize most of it as anything more than confidential and cooperative. That's a carefully chosen non-answer, accurate but not informative. What we can say with confidence, a meeting took place between the family's legal team and the Jackson County District Attorney's Office on July 15th. Multiple things were reportedly agreed to in that meeting, though none of the specific agreements were detailed publicly. The family's attorneys say they expect both the DA and their own team to honor those agreements. Separately, a forensic pathologist, Dr. Roger Mitchell, has made himself available to conduct an independent autopsy, pending access being granted by the district attorney's office and the medical examiner. As of the press conference, that access had not yet been confirmed. What remains unresolved? No timeline has been given for when the joint cell phone examination will occur. No date has been set for the independent autopsy, and no public statement from Mississippi authorities was read or referenced directly at this press conference. Everything we know about the official investigation, at this stage, comes filtered through the family's legal team, which makes it credible as their account, but not a substitute for the authorities' own record.
Proven and shown with the methodology, the way they came about. Someone just can't come out and say, hey, I have a Ferrari, and then you believe they have a Ferrari. I don't have a Ferrari. The truth has to be shown. You got to bring them to your garage, show them the title. That's the truth. And yes, we will accept the truth. So the same way with what the young lady sitting next to you is saying, which is we have procedures that the courts require that we as lawyers ethically have to follow in order to turn over evidence. There's chains of custody. There's protected private information. And we are willing, in fact today, I'm not doing anything the rest of the day, to meet with the FBI and our person, our expert, to go over that phone. And we've made that clear. So we're ready to do that at any moment.
Lisa just want to say one last point on that point.
You said don't touch me.
I'm going to back up a little bit. So just to clarify, what the agreement was that the DA's office, and this is the Jackson County DA's office, as well as our forensic team, and possibly the FBI, were going to together download and examine the phone. So it's done one time with everybody together, right? This is very common in the law. I mean, what you all may be more used to is when there's a terrible car accident, and then there's an examination of that car, and everybody comes together one time. They don't move that car around, and everybody does their own thing. This is what is supposed to happen. We are waiting for the DA to determine the time, the place, the date. Let us know, and we are going to be there with our forensics team and anybody else, but it's done one time, one examination. We're ready for it to happen.
Julie Walker, Associated Press. Can you give us a sort of a timeline or what's next going forward, including any possible lawsuits that would be filed, not against you as you had mentioned before, but that you would be filing, and then the completion of the independent autopsy and how that's moving along, and anything else that would be moving forward? And I know you had mentioned you wanted that national day. Other than that, anything in the future?
If there's a single piece of physical evidence that could move this case forward, multiple attorneys pointed to the same thing: a phone, and who gets to examine it first. Attorney Lisa Park compared the planned examination to how investigators handle a car after a serious accident. One joint examination with every party present at once, rather than separate sequential access that could raise chain of custody questions later. There are, broadly, two ways to read this case right now, and the press conference itself illustrated both. One reading, this was a tragic accident on federal land, and the family's public campaign, however understandable given their grief, is running ahead of an investigation that simply hasn't concluded yet. Under that reading, the emphasis on race, reward money, and federal oversight risks shaping public perception before the facts are in. The other reading, this is exactly the pattern the family's attorneys describe. A young black man's death in the Deep South met with early, informal assurances of no foul play, followed by resistance to basic transparency that only shifts once sustained public and political pressure is applied. Neither reading is proven by anything said at this press conference. Both are consistent with pieces of what was said. That gap between what's consistent with a theory and what actually confirms it is the entire reason an independent, verified investigation matters more than any statement made from a podium, including this one.
As I said earlier, August 28th, the anniversary of Dr. King's March, Martin III and I called, we were doing a huge march in Washington, Lincoln Memorial. This will be highlighted in other cases because these things keep happening, and to protect the right to vote. So we intend to stay out on the battlefield as long as necessary. Yes.
And I'd asked about the independent autopsy.
We understand that Dr. Roger Mitchell made himself available at any point that the district attorney's office and the medical examiner will allow him to come. He's ready, willing, and able to go do it.
Brooklyn Banks with NAPJ News. You mentioned just now that multiple cases have happened like this that are similar. What do you think about this case in particular being called race politics?
About this case in particular, what?
Being considered race politics.
I think that the race politics of this case has been the reaction. I think that we're not predetermining that the case was racial. We're determining that the answer, the investigation, has been racially divided, and that's what made it racial. Yeah, I'll take two more. This is a press conference, not a revival. We're not going to be here all afternoon.
Yes, sir. Not also to be a loud voice. In particular, piggyback on what Attorney Crump said, is it the fact that this happened in Mississippi why it seems to be so difficult to get answers in regards to this young black man's death?
Did you say Trump or rather than Crump? I'm just trying to. Yeah, we're praying for you at the prayer meeting.
I want to keep an open mind. I know there have been several attacks on us just for asking questions, and it's okay.
One question near the end of the press conference may end up mattering more than any other because it's about jurisdiction, not just facts. Because Horn Island is federal property under National Park Service jurisdiction, Congresswoman McBath and the legal team argue federal authorities have a direct obligation to investigate, a point they underscored by contrasting it with arrests made in an unrelated case on other federal parkland. As of this press conference, here is where things formally stood. The Congressional Black Caucus had submitted a written request to federal authorities and was awaiting a response, with an informal 7-day window cited by Congresswoman McBath. No formal death investigation by the National Park Service had been publicly confirmed at the time of the press conference, despite Horn Island's federal status. A National Day of Prayer had been announced for August 19th, what would have been Nolan Wells' 19th birthday, with a vigil planned in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. The family's attorneys were explicit that they had not yet filed a lawsuit, but had sent preservation letters, standard legal notices intended to prevent the destruction of evidence, not an indication that litigation is imminent, though it does keep that option open.
Not treat Nolan any differently. That's what we're trying to do. That's all we're asking.
All right, we're going to take one more, and then we have to take the family out. Jesse Jackson Jr., who has his own radio show.
I represent KBLA today. Let me ask a question, Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Crump, and even the Congresswoman. Nolan Wells' body was found on federal territory, Horn Island, run by the National Park Service. Are you aware of any death investigation opened up by the National Park Service into his death on federal land? First question, actually two parts. There have been 7 arrests made for the swimming pool, also run by the National Park Service. Why the disparity between arrests over the reflecting pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial and 0 arrests, subpoenas regarding the National Park Service in the case of Nolan Wells?
The answer, and I have the lawyer's answer, is that is why we raised it, thanks to the CBC and Congresswoman, to a federal level, because the federal government has to answer those questions of involvement because Horn Island is federal property. And while they can have a grand jury indict around the reflection pool, then announce they pulling back the charges, now have with a new special grand jury. They done went to a pool twice and haven't come to Horn Island one time, and it was federal property. So I think that the contradiction there is why we keep raising the questions.
And also, too, as a matter of record, being
in his closing remarks, Sharpton widened the frame from one case to a pattern he says extends well beyond Nolan Wells. He named 2 other cases in the same breath, Tyler Smith and David Urban, and argued that without sustained press attention, cases like these fade from public view long before they're resolved. Let's be precise about where this case actually stands. What is verified? Nolan Wells, 18, died around the 4th of July. His body was recovered from Horn Island, federal land in Mississippi. His family has retained independent legal counsel. A joint forensic examination of his cell phone is planned but not yet scheduled. The Congressional Black Caucus has requested federal involvement, and a national day of prayer is planned for what would have been his 19th birthday. What is disputed or unconfirmed? Any specific cause of death, whether foul play has been ruled in or out, the substance of any private assurances reportedly given to the family, and the exact status of the Mississippi authorities' own investigation, which was not directly represented at this press conference. What matters here isn't a verdict. This documentary isn't offering one, and neither did the people who spoke at that podium. What matters is the gap between a family's public plea for transparency and the private process that's supposed to deliver it. Cases like this are resolved by forensic reports and sworn testimony, not by press conferences. But press conferences are often what determine whether the public and the officials who answer to them keep paying attention long enough for that resolution to happen at all. We'll be following the joint cell phone examination, the independent autopsy, and any federal response to the Congressional Black Caucus's request as they develop. If you want to know the moment any of that changes, the autopsy results, a federal response, an arrest, or a clearance, subscribe and turn on notifications. We only cover this case with what's actually confirmed, and we'll bring you that update the moment it exists.